Welcome, everyone, to Recovery Rockstar. My name is Melinda White. I am a person in long-term recovery. What that means to me is that I have not had to use alcohol or drugs since December 28, 2011, and I've had the blessing of learning how to live a lifestyle of love in recovery rather than be an active addiction. And I remain grateful for the people who have gone before me and have shown me the way, and in turn having the blessing of being able to work with other people that are seeking help from addiction. I want to, as always, put a plug in for Narcan naloxone, the overdose kit that is available, so readily available in our state now. There are even vending machines with Narcan. You can look up the health department website to find a pilot site near you. I encourage people to learn more about Narcan to make sure that you have one on hand. It's better to have a kit and not need it than to need a kit and not have it. I also want to put in a plug. We are coming upon our third annual Substance Use Addiction Summit at the Champlain Valley Expo. The summit is on Friday, July 19th. The summit presentation is from 10 to 11:45 a.m. And from noon to 4 o'clock, there are going to be up to 100 different organizations holding booths to share information with the general public on the services that they provide. I want to really clarify there is no registration required for attendance and there's no charge for this event. This is 100% grassroots event open to the public so people and family can learn about how to recover from addiction, how to access services, how the services work in the state of Vermont. We also have organizations coming from Massachusetts, from New Hampshire, from New York. So I really encourage people to come. We're also trying to get some extra food trucks. So come and have a bite to eat. Meet a number of people that work in the field. We also are going to have Blue Heron performing some music in the afternoon, and I know I'm biased because these are dear friends of mine, but Ethan and Marty are also exquisite musicians, so I encourage you to come and meet them as well. So today I'm going to be interviewing somebody that I have had a blessing of working with, talking to. Haven't known as long as some of the other guests I've interviewed. Don't know a lot about his personal recovery journey, but what I do know is like it takes one to know one. I could sense right off that this person was a recovery rock star before I came out and asked the question. And of course, right off, I thought, if I'm feeling a message of hope from this person, that others will too. So I want to say, Mike, thank you for coming on my show.
Thank you, Melinda. I appreciate you having me.
I appreciate you coming. I'm excited to learn a little bit more about you. I know our viewers, whenever they reach out, they say that, they learn things about sometimes what we go through in our journeys that they otherwise wouldn't know without hearing it from the people who go through it. So thank you again.
Yeah, you're welcome. Happy to be here. And, that's part of our lives as people in recovery. It's really important for us to share the message and spread hope.
I love that. That's what we do, right? If we're asked to be of service, we say yes,
exactly.
Without even knowing what we're all walking into.
Exactly.
So, Mike, tell me a little bit about what your life was like as a young person. Where did you grow up?
Yeah, so I grew up in New Jersey. Great family, really supportive. I was a pretty active kid. Loved sports, loved, just staying busy, getting outside. And honestly, it was a really happy childhood. No complaints. I was very fortunate and very blessed.
Awesome. And what are some of the things that you enjoyed most? It sounds like you like being active. Were you into like sports, music?
Yeah. So I played sports growing up. I also was, enjoyed snowboarding, surfing, things of that nature. So I was busy, and I was very fortunate to have parents that, supported me through every activity that I wanted to do.
Awesome. Awesome. So tell me what it looked like in your kind of junior high school years.
Yeah.
What did that look like? And did you learn anything about any kind of substances from peers around that time?
I did. Now as someone in recovery, and I've done a lot of reflecting on, why I started using and why I started drinking, I realized it was because I wasn't comfortable with who I was. I lacked confidence in myself and just wanted to be accepted and fit in. So yeah, that's when it started, probably about 6th grade. Had my first drink, started dabbling in other substances after, and progressed from there, of course.
Wow, yeah, and that's a pretty young age. It's pretty common that I hear people say maybe 13, 14, 15. And oftentimes, I heard you say dabbling. That's a common answer I get too, is like kind of trying some stuff out and then learning there's a relief of some sort in doing so.
Yeah.
What did it look like? Let's look at like your high school years. Did you find that you were dabbling more, or was it still experimental?
I was a weekend partier through high school. You know, I was pretty scared of trying a lot of things. I also had a lot going on. I was playing sports. I was, you know, trying to be a good student. And I had a lot of structure around me, which helped me maintain and not, you know, which later on in my life, obviously, I wasn't able to do once I lost some of that structure. So I was like the social weekend partier.
Right.
That's it, you know. Never was always afraid to go a little further.
And it's interesting you mentioned that a little bit of fear, which I like to define as like a healthy fear, right?
Yeah.
What was that fear over? Just kind of getting caught and then losing, you know, the trust of people who were giving you trust, or?
I'm not sure. I would say it was, you know, my life wasn't so, I wasn't in so much pain and struggle that I really need to escape further than the weekend drink or smoking a joint with friends.
Right.
And people around me had started dabbling into some other substances, and at that point, I didn't really see the need for it, and I was afraid of what would happen. Maybe part of that was I knew myself, and, you know, I know when I like something, it's hard enough to control. So I think that kind of kept me in check for a little while.
Gosh, I identify so much with that too, because I have a similar story with, you know, alcohol, maybe marijuana, but having a fear of trying cocaine because I heard it was super addictive. And I was like, if I try it once, I'll be hooked for life. Had a fear of using, you know, acid or others because I knew people that went on a bad trip to you know, so all of those things, and not wanting to lose trust of, like, you know, having a good reputation for being a good kid. And eventually that stuff goes away, right? That fear eventually goes away. What did that look like for you when you started finding yourself using a little bit more?
Well, I think once I, you know, started trying some other substances, it was so powerful, and it was exactly what was missing, that the brakes came off completely.
Right.
You know, tried it once, and I was that person that was like, wow, I am in love with this.
Yeah.
Like, this fills the void that's been missing for a long time. And that's what I was afraid of the whole time, and once I did, there was really no turning back for me.
It's amazing too, because I've talked to so many people that maybe their whole childhood was a trauma in and of itself. Other people might relate their use to a specific event, and for some people it might be just kind of dabbling, and even if there's not one specific thing to highlight, it's just that feeling of completion, right? And like you had said earlier, feeling like you do have a place. I think as humans, we all struggle with the not enough isms, right?
That was it. I felt different. I felt like an outsider. I didn't love myself. And I felt like maybe I didn't deserve love, right? And that leads you to a pretty dark place of thinking about who you are as a person. So when I found something that fixed that, there was really no stopping that.
Yeah, off to the races. So once you started progressing in your use, was there a point that it became daily?
Yeah, pretty. So I guess once I got to college, I was playing a sport in college, and it really had minimized my using. My partying was pretty limited at that time. I would call it normal college partying my freshman year. After my freshman year, I had a sports injury, and from there, I started my use picked up to daily. But it would ebb and flow, right? It would be, you know, weeks on, week or so off. That summer after my freshman year of college, one of my good friends passed away from an overdose, and that scared me. That really scared me. But only for about 2 or 3 months.
Right.
That's all it was a stop for a few months. And once I picked back up, there was no break. There was no stopping. There was a daily use. In the beginning, it was, you know, maybe I'd make it halfway through the day before starting. But not long after that, it was first thing in the morning, last thing at night. That's what I was doing.
Yeah. And it's interesting how, we hear that this is a progressive disease, right? So even if we stop for a time, it doesn't stop progressing.
Yeah.
And how you're highlighting some factors will happen that make you kind of pull the reins in a little bit. I think if I had my first DUI at the age of 18 and nobody in my family had ever been in trouble, they didn't drink, smoke, swear, all this stuff. So it was like a big deal. But then by 21, when I was legal, another one. And then it's just like these events happen. But as soon as we pick up again, we forget so quickly the discomfort we had when that bad event happened. Yeah. So you had mentioned how it ended up being daily, where it's like first thing in the morning, last thing at night. Did you find that before that happened that you would promise yourself that I am not going to do this anymore?
Oh, constantly. I tried to quit thousands of times. Every night it was a promise to myself, like, I'm waking up tomorrow, I'm not doing this again.
Right.
And the pull was too strong. Like, I had no solution. I was, physically addicted, and it was the only thing that brought me peace and comfort.
Right. And then it's like you can't access the part of your brain that you had the night before saying no more.
Yeah. Oh, once that feeling wears off, and that morning you wake up and you're not feeling great, you make every bargain and promise with yourself to one last time.
Right. And survival mode kicks in.
Yep.
So what did it look like when you got to a place that you decided that you needed more than just that promise to yourself at bedtime not to do it again? Did something happen, or did you just get to a point?
I pushed that point as far as I possibly could, repeatedly. Promises with family members, promises with therapists, anybody bargaining, like, I will go to treatment, but right now I'm good. Mm-hmm. Let me finish this and then I'll go. Let me graduate from college and then I'll go. And I bargained a lot, and for one reason or another, that just I was able to continue doing what I was doing. Eventually I did go to an IOP program, then a detox, then back to an IOP, PHP. So that once that cycle started, it was the beginning of the end, but I wasn't quite ready. And then probably a year and a half after that, consequences became greater. I got in some trouble, and everything became real, and everybody around me realized, like, this is something that we need to address right now. Mm-hmm. And the next morning, I was off to inpatient rehab.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, too, because you're talking, and just for the viewers, so like IOP is an intensive outpatient, which is typically usually 3 days a week, 3 hours, depending on the organization. PHP is a partial hospitalization. You mentioned detox, which is usually like 5 to 7 days to get off the substances. But it also is sounding like you weren't totally ready. Maybe you were doing that to get people to kind of leave you be, but not because you truly wanted it yourself.
100%. I was not ready. In my mind, I wanted to stop. I'd wanted to stop for, years at this point. So, figure I was probably 23, 24 at the time. Mm-hmm. And I had been wanting to stop since I was, 19 without success. And the desire to stop, it wasn't enough. I wasn't ready to do whatever it took.
Right.
I was ready to do, a little bit, but I still had this job that I thought was, like, important, and I still had whatever else going on that I thought was more important. I can't go to inpatient treatment yet. I need to go to IOP because I need to maintain this job. Well, guess what? I lost a job because I was in active addiction.
I'm so grateful you just said that, especially because there's some people that might be in early recovery, and we encourage them, as much as you may want to, start a new relationship, or you've got this new job that's a big deal, or whatever it might be, that whatever you put ahead of your recovery, you're going to essentially lose anyway. Yeah. That almost always happens. I won't say all the time, but almost always. So it sounds like you got to a point where you realized, like, okay, I have nothing to lose by going and getting help.
Yeah. I also knew I had everything to lose if I didn't go and get help, because I still had a supportive family. I had been in a long-term relationship with this person who is probably one of the best human beings you'll ever meet, and she was done. Yep. My family was done. Mm-hmm. So I said, okay, I'll do it. I'll go to treatment. I'll go for, a short period of time. I'll come right back to this life, right? Because I thought I had this big, great life going on. I was 25. I was living back at my parents' house. I had just gotten fired from a job. I had nothing going on.
Right.
I had a very loving and supportive family around me, but they were done with the nonsense, and they were deathly afraid for my life. Yeah.
So it sounds like they didn't want to continue contributing to you killing yourself.
Yeah. The scariest thing that I didn't know at the time, but I found out later is, back living home with my parents, and they were getting up multiple times throughout the night to check on me to make sure I was alive.
Yep, that's familiar.
So I still didn't really see it. I didn't. I got to treatment. I said, I'm here. I'm going to stop doing the substances. I'm probably going to go home and I'm going to continue drinking. I'm not going to take part in any recovery programs. Not going to take part in any of that. I just need to get off this really addictive substance. But the reality is that the addictive substance wasn't the issue. It was the internal void. It was the way I felt about myself that was the issue.
Right. Addiction is the disease of the brain, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, how many times have I seen people, and myself included, where it's like, I just trade seats on the Titanic.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I won't do heroin and opiates anymore, but I'll go ahead like marijuana or alcohol and all these things. And it's like, the ship might go down a little bit slower in some seats, but it's still not going the direction that we want it to.
I wasn't ready.
Right.
And luckily, the willingness came while I was in treatment.
I love that. I love that too. Oftentimes I'd rather see somebody go to treatment for the wrong reasons or not wanting to versus just not go at all, because sometimes that change happens. What did that look like for you when you finally realized like you were invested now?
I woke up one day. I'd been there for a number of days. I was still not feeling great, but I had detoxed at this point. And I went into my therapist's office and said, I think I want to look at aftercare options. And she looked at me and she's like, you've been telling me every day since you got here that you're leaving on this day and you're going home. So she said, let's start looking. And I did. And that was the change. Immediately, I was like, something's different. Started looking at places that were near where I was living, where my parents were. And someone made a suggestion that I listened to. This woman I trust very much, she helped me get into treatment. She said, why don't you go up to this sober living in Portland, Maine? I said, I know nothing about Maine and nothing about Portland, but if you say it's a good idea, it sounds like a great option. And I called, my girlfriend, my fiance now, I called her and I said, what do you think about me moving to Maine? She said, she was very surprised, but she said, if that's what you think you need to do, then I 100% support you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And those, I think, are the gifts that we're given, are those people who are willing to sacrifice so we can save our lives.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So you went to this place in Maine.
Yeah.
And what did that look like? What was your experience there?
It was just a place for me to develop a community and learn how to live sober, and not just not just this idea I had of what recovery looked like. It shattered all notions of that, right? I thought it was boring. I thought I was never going to have friends. There's no, I was 25. There's no 25-year-olds that are sober. And, I get into this house with, I don't know, whatever it was, 10, 15 other guys that are all around my age, all doing the same thing. And I developed real friendship, real friendship, which I had been missing my whole life. I had friends, but by the time I got to high school, all of my friendships revolved around using, partying, whatever it was. So, developed a community, found passions, found things I like, and found a reason to continue pushing in this direction.
I love that. It's like the therapeutic value of one person in recovery helping another is without parallel. And it's like when you think about, I was just sharing this the other day, even knowing that you're in recovery, or if I walk outside and there's people that I know are in recovery, even if I don't know them, knowing that we share one super intimate thing, we don't want to die of this disease, like that's pretty intimate, so that it automatically makes a bond that's hard to describe, right? Like a unity. So it sounds like you got well connected, and of course we know Johann Hari, opposite of addiction is connection, and this is one of those examples, right? Connecting with, some people say, well, I found my tribe, I found my family, and it sounds like the nice thing is that you also had your blood family, and your fiance. You did have people that were supporting you through this, which is huge. Sometimes people don't even have that, and that's why it's even more critical to get in the center of the recovery community.
I know how fortunate I am, and I work with individuals every day that don't have the same support and they don't have the same opportunities that I did, and I know how much more difficult it is. But that's why the work that we're doing is that much more critical. Right now we have the recovery centers, we have the resources, and we have the education on what it takes. Right, it's not go into treatment and go back to your life. It's build your community, go into treatment, find a home for yourself, a home in every sense, a stable living situation, a community, people you can call and trust, rely on. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah. And do you think it's interesting, you had mentioned before you had a job back in the day that you thought was such a big deal, and now you're doing some work in the field of helping other people with addiction, and I was in a similar situation, and then of course changing my entire pathway in professional life, but really it's about, they say happiness are those 3 P's, right? Purpose, passion, pleasure.
Yeah.
So in your life today, what does your life look like, and do you think you have found purpose, passion, and pleasure?
100%. I joked about it a little bit when I first got into the field that, if you went back to any of the programs that people I'd worked like when I was going through treatment, did you ever think I would be working in the field? There'd be a hard no, like absolutely not. And it's one of the greatest gifts that I have been given, is just to be able to help people and pick up the phone, whether it's work or just someone just needs to talk, like I'm here, right? And that's my passion and my work are intertwined.
Yep.
And I enjoy it. Like I enjoy sharing the journey and with these people, and then I also have my life outside of work, and believe it or not, it's surrounded by recovery and people in recovery. Like
I believe it.
That's what it is, and it's amazing, right? My community are all people that are similar interests. We all got sober around the same time, and we just connect like I could never connect with someone before that.
Do you feel like being in recovery has helped you to, when you are around the people you're close to, or even meeting new people, help to kind of like get the small talk out of the way, in a sense that we tend to just dive deeper right from the get-go?
Sometimes, absolutely. I think people in recovery, you kind of know, like, the small talk, and you're like, what it is. And it's like, we know we're so much deeper than this.
Right.
And I remember, when I first got sober, I kept thinking about, like, all of a lot of the conversations I was having with small talk conversations, like, oh, what do you do for work? Oh, cool. How's your whatever? And that was it. And it's like, now it's like, how are you doing? Like, actually, how are you doing? Like, sometimes I still get caught up, like, it's not just good. Like, you don't just say, oh, I'm good, don't worry about it. It's like, you could just share what's going on. It's
the
like
authentic caring to really know what's beneath the surface.
Yeah.
If you were, for people who are listening, what are some things you would highlight as what's been helpful for you to not just get in recovery, but to like stay, right? Because sometimes putting the substances down, that's the easy part, right?
That is the easy part.
As we say, one of my friends says, well, you take an alcoholic, you get rid of the alcohol, you still have the ick.
Yeah.
So how do you stay stopped? Like, what do you find at this stage in your life helps you?
I work a 12-step program. I have since I got sober. That means sponsorship, fellowship, community service work. That's a huge part of it for me. My level of what that looks like has changed over the years. So when I need it, it's there, but I'm always consistently there. It's the level of my involvement. It can go up, and my life is also full now. It's really full, which is great. And what has helped me stay sober is really doing the work on myself. Surrounding myself with good people, Not being afraid to ask for help, right? Like this idea of an ego of like, I'm sober for this long, I should be fine. It's like, no, like life is still difficult.
Yeah.
Life is difficult for someone that is not dealing with addiction or recovery. Like life is just can be hard. Now you add to the fact that, you know, someone in recovery probably, you know, didn't develop the proper coping skills or didn't, you know, experience things a lot of the same way. So what does that look like? There's no shame in, you know, therapy, community, 12-step, like do everything that you need to do. And at any one point in my recovery, I've done all of those things.
I love that. A lot of times people will ask, you know, well, what should I do? Is it this, or this? And it's like, why not try it all and see what works, see what sticks? You also mentioned being part of giving back, and I know that that's a message that we, you know, it's made very clear in the recovery community, regardless of what path you take, is that, you know, I see a lot of broken people that get in recovery and they have no self-esteem.
Yeah.
It's like, well, do something esteemable, right? And as we do those things, we start realizing it's just the little things, right? It's not the big stuff, it's the little everyday stuff.
Yeah.
So in our last couple of minutes, if there was somebody listening right now who's struggling and has that whole, you know, there's so much negative bias around coming out and saying, hey, I need help with addiction, right? There's so much fear and shame and guilt. What would you encourage somebody? What would you say to somebody who's struggling?
Well, it depends on where they're at, right? It depends on what their exposure to recovery has been, right? But I would just encourage them to, you know, seek out guidance and seek out help and use some of the many great recovery centers in the state. Go there because you'll get connected like you never experienced, and you'll feel this love and warmth that you've never experienced. That's always the first step. That's what I tell people all the time. Like, you connected to one of the turning points over there? Okay, well, why don't you go down there? We'll continue this conversation, but go get connected. And the main reason is because it gives them hope, and it gives them people around them that can relate to what they've been going through. Yeah. Because for me, when I was active, it was, my circle was really small, and the only people in my circle could never imagine what I was actually going through.
Right. I love that you said that too, because, you know, it's interesting. I met somebody not that long ago who asked, you know, where I'm working now, and I said the Turning Point. They're like, what's that? And it's baffling to me, like, oh my gosh, how can the whole state of Vermont not know what the Turning Point is? But the Turning Point is recovery resource place for people who are, and family members that are seeking information on recovery. So I appreciate that you mentioned those. I want to thank you, Mike. It has been such a pleasure talking to you. It's a pleasure working with you, partnering with you. I'm so grateful for you and your journey, and I know there's so much more to be had, so you're one of those people that down the road I might phone you and say, let's do Where Are They Now series.
Absolutely.
But thank you so much for being willing to come on the show.
Thank you, and thank you for all you do. You make such an impact on the community.
Thank you, Mike. And I want to say thank you to our viewers. Again, I want to remind you that the 3rd Annual Substance Use Addiction Summit is on Friday, July 19th at the Champlain Valley Expo. From 10 to 11:45 is the summit presentation, and from noon to 4 are the booths. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time on Recovery Rockstar. Have a good day.